Oh my goodness, that's hilarious.
Wow. It's nice to have
Hi,
this
welcome.
conversation with you, Sandy, this morning all by ourselves.
Welcome to our late show.
Yes, 8 minutes of us having a show by
Oh my
ourselves because Sandy was being.
Well, luckily Larry was on because you know why he was on?
Why?
It's because he was on he's a subscriber to our YouTube channel.
I see.
It was live on YouTube, but not on Facebook. Hi, welcome everybody. There they are.
See, now look at you. You were like feeling all sad and rejected and alone in the universe. Nobody loves me. Nobody's tuned in anymore. You're over the hill. It's over. It's done with. You're like going all to the right. And then here it was.
Good morning. Yay, we have people.
All sitting there waiting for you, wondering why have you shut us out?
Like we're like, he goes about time. Larry, we thought, okay, so.
Well, explain to everybody that you and I have been having a wonderful conversation by ourselves under the assumption that Sandy pressed the go live button.
We are on YouTube though. That little section. If you missed what we had to say, it's on YouTube. It was posting to YouTube, but it was not posting.
So for those of you that are just tuning in because Sandy let you into the party, we're broadcasting from Kansas City, which is dark and ominous and raining, and it's one of those days where you just look outside and you want to go back to bed and go, I don't want to really go out there.
Right.
So we have Sandy. Sunshine Sandy to brighten your day, to get you going for the week. Because if you look outside at the weather, it sucks out there right now.
It does.
Yeah, it's really sucky. So
it's the last day of August. Mugs up
for the end of August. But you see, again, remember I always talk about perspective, right?
Yes.
So from this person's perspective, what the last day of August means is that we're closer to football. You see?
Oh,
yes.
Is your foot when?
So instead of looking at the negative,
I want to know when.
I'm looking at the positive of it, going, guess what? Well, September 13th.
Start over.
Larry wants us to start over. Yeah.
Well, we already talked about all the. All of our good content has already been spoken about. We're sorry.
It's over now. You just have to do a rewind.
You just have to go to YouTube and see it. Hey, Kenny. Hey.
Yeah.
So, my goodness. Hello, Bill. I didn't say hi, Dawn. Yes, Sandy was having a Monday morning glitch, apparently. The last day of August. I've been doing this live challenge. I've been on this challenge where you go live every day in a group. It's like a group thing, of course, for coaching, group coaching. And today is our last day of doing the challenge. And it's kind of sad. You get to know these people in this 30 days. So is
it coaches coaching coaches?
Yeah, it kind of is. It's a live streaming coach setup, and then you become friends with all of these different people, and they all have different content. They're from across the world, Australia, England, they were everywhere, Belgium, they're everywhere. And it was really, really cool. About 500 people. And today's our last day of our challenge. And so it's been pretty interesting. So yeah, I've learned a lot. I downloaded a new program, and we'll see.
Oh, wow.
I know. Watch out.
Watch out, world.
vMix will
got
be
a new program.
Yeah, if I hit go live, that is. If I know how to hit the go live.
Sometimes Sandy, it's the simple things in life that matter.
Yeah. like
pressing the go button,
Yeah, go live. I mean, I did our intro. I did our 30-minute countdown. I did everything.
You looked great, Sandy. You were awesome. There's nobody would know. Nobody could see you.
That was great.
Yeah. Probably the best one ever, Sandy, and nobody saw it. It's you.
I was going, why is nobody talking to us? So good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
I hope that you're staying safe in this craziness. The last 10 minutes was windy. I was telling Bob that my furniture outside was kind of falling over and going all over the place. Yeah. So be careful out there if you're in Kansas. But then those storms came through, so I'm glad that they didn't do as much damage as they thought that they were going to do. But they still, pray for those people.
So all of us humans are sort of grumpy this morning, or tempted to be grumpy because it's rainy out there. Mother Nature is going, oh my God, I'm so thirsty. This is great. It's like all the grass was starting to turn brown, the trees were kind of looking pathetic, and the plants were a little bit saggy there. So, there's an old saying, water's life. So on the one hand, while it's dark and ominous, there's underneath the soil, they're all screaming, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but so today's August 31st, and I always think about this time of the year, used to with the kids going back to school. I always like the smell of the new school supplies and all of that.
Oh yeah.
And just remember, if you guys know some teachers that have really went back to classroom, they need supplies. Don't forget that. They really do need your supplies. They used money out of their own pockets.
Yeah.
To supply their classrooms. So.
Well, and we need to really be supportive of our teachers because they're actually being quite courageous.
Yeah.
I mean, this is we're kind of walking into an unknown here, and I know all the schools are working very diligently to try to take things that we don't fully understand and be safe and do all the right things. And, and you got a bunch of kids that are just ready to just, be with their friends and things that they haven't done for months. And so there's going to be a whole lot of energy happening that first week of school. You got to have a lot of kids that are going to be bouncing off the walls and a lot of teachers trying to figure out how in the heck do I do this?
Yeah, the behavior modification, because you can get kids used to a setting and used to a schedule, and now they're like way off. They're so off. And the thing is that, and then now they have to be stricter with them on hygiene, obviously, and that's huge. How are you going to? I know working with children and children's ministry, corralling 20 young children not to do something is such a challenge.
Yeah.
It's almost like putting little kids into a medical setting.
Right.
It's like, hey, all you kids come into the OR.
Right.
And don't touch anything, and don't breathe on each other, and don't, and that's, I know they're not doing 20. They're only doing 10. I think they're only allowed to do 10, something like that.
It's going to be interesting. I know it was kind of cute because, I haven't really, since I haven't had kids in school for a long time, I haven't really been paying attention much to it, but I have a 11-year-old granddaughter going on 12 who had to get on FaceTime with me this week and give me a fashion show.
Aww, nice.
Like, Papa, look at all these. It's like my grandsons. Her little brothers. They could care less. They're more digging holes and and they're like, school. Oh God, we had to do that. My granddaughter though, it's like, oh, look at this outfit. Oh, look at this outfit. Look at that.
Wow,
it was so cute. She was all excited about her outfit for school.
So what's going on news-wise in the world? Do you know? I don't.
Well, I'll tell you something. I'm a little hesitant to talk because I don't want to, even though it's gloomy outside, I don't want to be more gloomy. But one of the things that startled me a little bit this weekend, because I decided I'd been so preoccupied with the situation with my mom and some repair stuff I do in my truck and other things. I really haven't been sort of out of the cycle news-wise. But I was just amazed as I was looking through all the international news about how everywhere in the world right now, countries internally, it's like there's just conflict. There's people in the streets, there's riots, it's like, we kind of, because the United States is such a dominant nation, and it's so large, and we sort of dominate the news, and we're all sort of focused here. But a lot of what's happening here is actually also happening in other places. And that was really fascinating to me, because I'm like, okay, why is that? What is going on that this is a global thing? So typically when you see that much conflict, it's like we're in a world war, right? Where it's nations against nations. There's that kind of conflict. What I'm seeing is there's conflict within nations.
Right.
Which is really interesting to me. And I'm like, okay, what is this? So I don't have any great answer to all of it. I'm just noticing it, going,
yeah,
something's up here.
Well, I think it comes back down to just the same old war, good against evil. I think that's what's happening. Corruption against righteousness. So I that's just my opinion, and that's what I'm seeing. And so,
but there's unrest in the world.
This is where you start praying. Right. This is where you start praying. We need prayers. We need prayers going out all the time. I mean, I'm sure that many people do that as a practice, but I feel like if you're not a seeker, a prayer, I think this is a time. I think this is a key time to maybe start getting in touch with your divine creator, because I think he's going to give you peace in it, is what I'm saying. And I don't think I'm not saying we're going to solve it, because it's the same war that's went on for a very long time. And there's no solution to it except for you being on the side of what's good and what's right. Right. So
it's just interesting to me, though, that it's I'm a ponderer, so I like to and then my favorite question all is why. Okay, so
yeah,
I mean, it's not like I'm old enough to be a child of the 60s, so in some ways what I'm seeing now reminds me a lot of the 60s. And I'm embarrassed to say this, but I feel like now I'm like one of the old guys who in the 60s was rolling his eyes going, oh, I've been there, done that, seen that,
right.
So history has its way of sort of, cycling through, and we're in a season right now, people say, oh, we've never been more more polarized. Right. And I'm like, well, I grew up in the 60s. That was pretty polarized too. I remember Vietnam and riots in the streets and civil rights and all of that. And so I'm kind of looking at it going, well, I don't know if it's more. What may be giving the impression that it's more is technology. We're getting back into my book and all that, but what's happened is that with the advent of the internet, right, and social media and all that, information now is being transferred at unparalleled rates, right? So we have more access to more information. So and what's made it crazier is the information is traveling with us because of the cell phone, right? See, it used to be you had to go home and sit in front of your TV, right? Or you might be in your car listening to your radio. Well, now we have this little device that travels with us that's sending us notifications. We can see videos in a second, right? So we're constantly being bombarded, right, with all this information.
It is, yes.
And so I think I don't know if it's more. What may be more is that we're more aware.
We're more aware.
You know what I mean? I don't know if there's more conflict. Maybe it's always been this way. You know what I mean? But maybe
I know I sound like I just take everything globally, right? Yeah. So in context, like, okay, it's this and this, and it's always been that way, and until the end, it will be that way, right?
Right.
And that's why I am so big about people finding that inner peace and that inner place to be grounded, because that's all that matters in the end. And I think I told you that I was taking care of some elderly people on the weekends, and yesterday I had such a great conversation with the gentleman, and he was like, if I'd known I was going to live this long, he said, I would have done some things differently. And I said, well, okay, tell me, I want to know. And he goes, maybe we can write a book. So he's talking about him and I writing a book about geriatrics, I guess.
Oh,
and
wow.
so he said, I wished I would have gotten just these little things fixed on my body, because he's a physician. So of course he's thinking in his view of what he would fix is, I guess he has some neuropathy. And so he's like, I would have gotten this fixed. Like, I knew it was coming and I could have handled the surgery when I was younger. But now I can't. So, I wish I would have got that fixed so I could, have done this. And I wish I would have gotten this, about his physical body. And so that was interesting. And then he said, I wished I would have set up my end, of doing some other things differently, having more devices to help him, with all of those things. So it was an interesting conversation. So I'm going to continue that dialogue with them just to, because maybe there is something to that. But he's like, I just didn't expect I'd be here this long.
Yeah.
It's like, I was hoping.
Well, as you and I've talked about, for me, I've always believed that within the biblical narrative, there's great wisdom and insight. And one of the writers, James, wrote in his letter, he said something really interesting. He said, wherever you have selfish ambition, right, and greed, you're going to have chaos and evil, right? So the equation is, if you're seeing chaos and evil, then you can know that at the root of that is the lust, right, for status. So it's your ego, people feeding their ego, lust for status, right? And the greed, in other words, the lust for stuff. So I call it status and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we can sit and look at all the verbiage, right? You can sit and watch Fox and CNN, and you can hear all the political pundits, and everybody's talking about ideology and politics and all the kind of stuff. But when you get down to the root, what the biblical narrative, lays out is that what's driving so much of this is humans lusting after status and stuff.
Yep.
That's really the root cause. So unless we deal with that, right. And so that's where, with me, and again, I'm kind of putting my cards out on the table here, but that's where, for me, I look at a lot of what's going on, whether it's the political, economic, all the various spheres out there, and I go, but the root issue is selfishness. Like
materialism.
If we don't deal with that,
yep,
we're not going to fix anything else, right? It's like a reoccurring problem.
Yeah. Well, I like what Michael said earlier.
Yeah.
He said it's not the being different from the 60s. The agenda is not equality for all, but the removal of our system of government and culture. That's more concerning now. And that, I think, yes, I don't know. It's cyclical. So it's all cyclical. I mean,
well, that was in the 60s too. I mean, I'm a little older than Mikey, so I remember some of it. That was there in the 60s too. But I agree with them in the sense that it's way more pronounced now. Like we're at a different level of that. Like there are people out there, basically challenging some of the fundamental foundation stones of which our civilization was built on, right?
Yep.
And they are challenging it. So that was there in the 60s, but it's now we're 50 years later, and it's I always think, I can't remember where this is, but there's it's like in I know in the story of Joseph, it talks about how 400 years later Pharaoh forgot, and I think one of the things that I notice with human history is that we don't study history, therefore we keep repeating the same things. And so it's kind of interesting to me. One of the things I'm seeing a lot right now is a lot of historical ignorance, because there's a lot of people that are clamoring for things. And if you
Yes.
just go back and study history, you'd go, well, do you not understand that all of that's been tried?
Funny.
And we've already been down that road.
Well,
and we already know the fruit of all of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I had a conversation last week, and what's happened is, okay, so in the 60s, all these kids that were the protesters are now the professors.
Yeah.
So in all of our schools. So and apparently history is not being taught anymore.
Right.
It's social studies or whatever it is. And it only starts in the 1940s. So our children and the children coming up now don't have any type of, and they're our future. Okay. So if they don't know our history, if they don't know the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, if they don't know anything, and they're not being taught it because certain people's agendas don't line up with believing that or thinking it's just an old artifact and not wanting to follow that. So that's what's happened. That's what's happening. And so that's why it's really important for us to teach our kids history, to teach our kids what the founding fathers meant. They all didn't agree. See, this is the thing that, they all agreed with each other. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. They were all from all different backgrounds. They were from all different biases. So when they put together those documents, it truly was inclusive of all of their different opinions and agreeing on certain things. And they wanted to stay in the middle, of politics, not being on this side or this side. So really,
well, there wasn't actually, if you want to know the truth, there actually wasn't politics, meaning that
they were trying
George Washington's very last letter that he wrote before he left office was a prophetic warning to the nation, because he started seeing those political parties emerging. And, to summarize his letter, he basically said, I fear the good of the party is going to outweigh the good of the people.
Yes.
That politics is going to enter and political parties are going to become the focus and not the good of the people. And that's exactly what's ended up sort of happening.
Right. So getting re-educated on that. I
saw an article.
I got a book called 5,000 Years. Do you know that book? If you look it up, actually the cover of that book looks like the cover of yours kind of.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. It's called 5,000 Years.
Something that I ran across an article earlier this year that stunned me. But there's 18 college universities where you can get a history degree and never take a history class. I mean, is that not the bizarrest thing?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how bad it's gotten in our academic world. They're so scared of history.
Yeah.
That you don't even have to take it to get a history degree.
Yeah. Did you see what Dawn said? She said it's in Missouri. It's still a requirement to learn the Constitution.
Yeah.
So,
but what they refuse to do, which is really going to be something I just think parents need to do is they don't teach the history behind the Constitution. Right, that Constitution came from somewhere. There was a journey. These men that wrote this Constitution, they experienced things in their lives, right? They went through the pain of tyranny. They knew what persecution was. They knew all these things, and so many of them had fled here to try to find freedom, right? And so this document that they wrote was about setting people free and giving them freedom, right? And what's crazy about it, it's all biblically based, right? The most fundamental statement in our whole civilization, that all men are created equal, only exists because that's the biblical value system.
Yes.
That God created us, right? You take that away and that whole concept of equality disappears.
And that's what's happening. So Michael said he has a better book. It's called 6,000 Years.
6,000 Years. Oh, he's 1,000 years before you.
And hi, Matt. Matt is from that group I was kind of telling you guys about.
Oh, okay, cool. But yeah, so this is one of the things that you know, and again, there's such a hidden agenda here behind so much of this. But the problem with the biblical narrative is that it holds us to account for our selfishness. I mean, that's if you go back and actually study
ego.
You study what Jesus did. Is Jesus understood that our biggest problem we have to overcome is ourself.
That's the truth,
right? The biggest problem on earth is us because we are self-centered, right? We are self-preserving. We are self-everything, right? And so Jesus comes along and he teaches, like, if you sit down and study the Beatitudes, right? The Sermon on the Mount. People just like, you know, they don't even know how to deal with that. And the reason is because everything in there is selfless.
Yeah.
Right? The whole
I used to think it was Beatitudes, not Beatitudes.
Oh, Beatitudes? What could be Beatitudes if you want it to be? But you know what I mean? It's like it's all about that. And so, I mean, the truth of it is that everything that we're seeing, all the chaos, if you really want to reduce it down to its most basic thing, it's a bunch of self-centered human beings all demanding what they want.
My way.
Exactly. And we're having and here's what, you know, again, I would get like I would get like booted off television.
We're going down.
Yeah, well, I would get booted off of television because what I would basically say is what we've got is a bunch of children throwing temper tantrums.
Where?
I don't get you. You didn't give me what I wanted. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's like, sorry. I mean, I don't want to be a hard ass about this, but I'm looking at this going, my God, this is, you know, I remember my kids when they were 2 and 3 doing this.
Yeah.
Right.
So when I always bring it back to, what do I bring it back to, Bob? What do I always bring it back to? in my mystical woo-woo place. I bring it back to truth. Having your truth. Having your personal truth and having that be your guide. And who is your truth? Where do you find your truth?
Right.
Seeking that truth. And that's what's going to keep you unwavered, right? That's what's going to keep you sturdy. That's going to be like the tree. You know, that's why you have this tree, right?
Yeah. The tree of life, huh?
It's the tree of life. And
what's driving me is, and again, these are all topics we can talk and develop more time, but see what's happened, and this is the fault of the religious world, but the religious world has reduced Jesus to the church. You know, it's like Jesus is the Jesus of the church, right? And so we go to church, and over there, everything Jesus teaches us, you know, that's it, right? But over here in this other thing, he's irrelevant. And I'm going, excuse me, he's more relevant than ever because those truths that you're talking about, right?
Right.
I mean, they're all there. He's taught them all. He actually, if you go back and look through the Sermon on the Mount, it's key to transforming everything, right? Everything that's happening now, if we followed those truths,
right,
the Sermon on the Mount, we'd have none of this.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds crazy. So I don't think Jesus is just Jesus of the church. I think Jesus has truth for all of us.
I think so too. You know, even so you like him?
Oh, Wayne. Yeah. Wayne.
Yeah.
You like Wayne?
I do. I mean, he's a little woo-woo, but he's a little woo-woo, but he talks about God.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, here's the thing is I think we all say that, you know, in spiritual realms, I think we do talk about God,
right.
But me personally, I'm a Jesus follower. So following Jesus's tenets is what I follow. And that's, and I think that's
I'm having a brain fart here this morning. Who's the really famous coach? The big guy that, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of his name now. I mean, am I, he's like a big
John Maxwell.
John Maxwell, that's the guy.
Okay.
John Maxwell, everything he teaches, he got from the Bible.
Yes, he did. Yes.
You know what I mean? This is what's so interesting. All John Maxwell's done is taking Jesus' teachings and the teachings of the scripture and just eliminated the religious verbiage off of it.
And put it into,
and everybody thinks he's brilliant, right? Everybody, oh, leadership principles. And I'm like, John Maxwell just basically repackaged Jesus. He rebranded Jesus.
Well, I mean, yeah.
So
it's true.
That's what I mean. It's kind of funny when you stop and think about it. It's like, wait a minute. But
I knew he had that.
And if you talk to him in person, that's what he would tell you, because he's a very strong Christian.
Right.
It influenced his.
He'll tell you. Yeah, he'll tell you.
Exactly. But everybody goes, oh, John, they're always quoting John Maxwell, who's quoting Jesus. Just.
Well,
it's like Rick Warren's book.
I mean, it's an old book.
Right.
It's an old good book.
Yeah.
He's just redoing it. But I mean, I follow John Maxwell. I like him. And there's so many out there, so many coaches now, as far as that goes. And I think that's where we're getting tripped up too, though. There's too many
coaches.
There's not too many coaches, but too many ideologies of. And I think that our kids are so confused about that, because because of this, they get to hear it and see all of it. And I personally went on my own spiritual journey of trying to make sure that I knew what I knew and I believed what I believed, and I had to learn about other religions and that kind of thing just to understand it, because you kind of don't know. Right. I mean,
well, what I
kind of seek it out to make sure of where you're grounded and where you stand.
What I've kind of learned over my experiences of failures and successes, that it's really hard to change people's thinking. In other words, for me to sit here and tell you to think different, you're going to resist that.
No.
So what I spend most of my time doing is actually helping people by suggesting, follow these breadcrumbs, and because you're making a statement, right? But what's behind that statement? Like, go back and here's some keys to researching that statement, because you need to go back. And this is something that, so again, I'm going to get philosophical here, but one of the things,
and that's different when.
Well, one of the things that I have noticed is we have become very fruit focused, and we have lost touch with roots. Meaning that because of technology, right? Because everything's become so visual. You know, everything is we live in this media facade, right? It's we're affected by, and so people are so impacted by the facade, but they don't ask, how did we get here? See, that's one of the reasons why history is so important to me, because what history does is it takes you back to the root of things.
Right.
Because at the root, and that's another Jesus principle, right? Because Jesus always talked about roots. The reason why is the root is the nature of a thing, right? And one of the things that's happened to us in our tech-driven world is we're not seeing the nature of a thing. We just see the facade of it. And we're making decisions on facades, right? And then we get down the road and we're like shocked and disillusioned, because when this facade crumbles, we're like, oh my God. And then we get disillusioned, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So this is with me, that's one of my big, I don't want to try to repaint your facade, but I will say, hey, please go back and study the root of where this comes from, because if you go back there, you may see it differently.
Right. Well, I like what Mike just said about that too. Kids are confused because they've been sold on one new ideology whose premise is that the old one is all wrong and too corrupt for change.
Right.
And why do they think it's corrupt? Because that's what people are saying. That's what that's what the agenda is pushing, is that
well, but here's the other side of this. So it's so partly what we're dealing with is a conflict between sociology and democracy, right? So and I deal with this frequently because I'm very involved in Africa, which in the 1960s became a major stronghold for Marxism, right? So almost all the revolutionary movements in Africa were based on Marxism. So one of the things that I've done in working with some of those people is it's really interesting because they said it's very clear that you have this anti-West bias. But I said let's look at Marxism for a second. Let's look at that world. I said in the 1917, 1900, in that period, the Marxists all said, well, the Tsar and all these people, they're corrupt. Very true, right? And so we're going to bring our system in because our system is fairer, right? Our system's going to change everything. So they come in, they overthrow. We have 70 years of history, right? But we don't really know what's going on, right? Because it's all hidden. So in 1917, we have a few rich guys at the top and a whole lot of poor people at the bottom. We have 70 years of an ideology that we don't know what's going on. Then Gorbachev drops the wall and we get to see what's going on. And 70 years later, what do we have? A few rich guys at the top and a whole lot of poor people at the bottom.
Oh, gosh.
The only thing that changed was who had the wealth, right? Which brings me back to my original point. What we never deal with is selfish ambition and greed, right?
There you go.
Thinking that systems are going to fix the problem.
They're not.
And that's not what fixes problems.
No.
Not putting another system in place.
Right.
So anyways, I'm getting a little preachy here this morning, but I'm just trying. So I keep trying. And so they all stare at me like, oh my God, you're right.
It's a little heavy from Monday.
Well, I'm just saying. So it's like they kind of, and they've all seen it. I mean, I'm dealing in Zimbabwe right now. Right. And what ended up happening was a few elite people ended up, having, they had a revolution, and now all those people are strangling everyone else because they're driven, because we haven't dealt with the real root issue.
Well, and I'm just going to talk about, there's a little town in Little America, and in the 60s, it was a Civil War town. Let's just put it that way. It was a town that had mainly whites. Okay. That had the power, had the money, all of that. And then in the 60s, I guess an organization came in and it flip-flopped the whole town. And so it's 90% African American, 10% white now. So what came in though, they thought they were going to make this big shift and change, but the people that came in to change that were corrupt. They came in into that little government, that little town, and changed up the politics in it. And then the people that took over actually just started electing their family members into all of the places. And then they started to embezzle from the government tax money. And so what was horrible for these people is they thought that they were getting these new people in there to make this big change. And then it just turned around and now it's even more corrupt, and the whole town went down. Like the whole downtown section, all boarded up stores, everything's gone. Like their whole economy just crashed. And it was because the wrong people took over. Right. They thought that those people were going to actually make a good change, and they didn't. They were corrupt, and it's again going back to selfishness and good and evil, right? Going right back to selfishness and that war, and it's sad to see. It's sad.
I get myself in trouble, but it's my perspective that what Michael's talking about is our fault. And I know my peers have a hard time hearing this, but the reality of it is that those of us that grew up through the volatile 60s and that whole period, when we started having children, the thing we wanted to do was protect them from pain. And what we did is we created an environment, and I'll tell you the real fundamental shift. When I was growing up in the 60s, our life centered around our parents, and the kids were sort of the satellite, the ancillary, right? It's like my parents had parties. We were told to get lost, right? Like,
go play.
Lost. Go play, right?
Go play.
And when my kids were being raised, they were the center of attention. Everything revolved around them.
Yeah.
They became the center of the universe. We protected them. We told them fair. You know what I mean? My son had to deal with it in sports because you could win and be the champion and you got the same trophy as everybody else. And everybody was a winner, even if they never won a game, right? They went to school. Everything was fair, was equal. All this, right? There was a system in place that protected them and kept them safe.
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, 60 Minutes did a show about them, and it basically concluded they are the most coddled, overprotected generation in the history of humanity, right? Yeah. I'm saying all this not as a slam to the millennials. All I'm trying to say is that we created their worldview, right?
Yes.
And all they're doing now is extending that out as adults, looking for a system that's going to coddle and protect them and keep them safe and make everything equal and fair, right? So I'm just saying we programmed them to think this way.
Yep. Yeah.
That's on us. That's it's not their, and so right now they're going through a real collision in their own world from the ideology and the worldview that they were raised, which was their normal.
Right. And depending on where their station was in morality wise and what they were taught.
Right.
That carries on as well.
Right. So when I see some of what's happening, I'm looking at it going, well, hello, duh. I mean, that's how we raise them to think.
Right. Well, I think about I think
too sweeping of a statement.
I think you and I come from different backgrounds as far as on the scale of things. Like I'm more on my parents were more the 60s liberal scheme. And I think you've talked about you were on the more conservative, right? So
no, my mom was big civil rights and women's rights and smoking Virginia Slim. So no.
Oh no, she was okay. See, and my parents were that way. My mom and dad were totally 60s.
So to understand history, one of the things, it was Isaac Newton who taught in physics that for every action, there's this corresponding and equal, right? But that's for inanimate objects. For animate objects, which is humans, the same dynamic takes place. For every action, there is a reaction. The difference is it's not equal because of emotions, right? So almost everything that you're seeing, right, is a reaction. So I'll give you just one sociological thing. Women's rights. You know what drove the acceleration of women's rights? Was Hugh Hefner in the sexual revolution. Because you know who got abused? Women. Right? Men got what they wanted. Women didn't get what they wanted. They got used and abused. So they had to stand up and fight, right? To not get abused by this new morality. So there's action and reaction. Right? And what happens is the it swings like a pendulum, right? So the reaction swings way out and it overreacts because we're dealing with pain, right? We're dealing with hurt. We're dealing with anger and resentment and all these things. So it's not corresponding. Well, you could take that through with civil rights. We could all the way through. And I could point to you action, reaction, right? Absolutely. And we're having one of those moments now.
Yeah.
So
how do you fix it, Bob?
Oh, Lord. There's one person that can fix
it. Well, it's not a person.
Well, one persona. How's that? Divine persona.
Person, but
yeah. No,
and that's true. That's where I know we always come back to this because that's what this show is rooted on. I mean, honestly, in
my first book that I wrote, which is called Saving Zimbabwe, the premise of the book is this statement: transformation of the soul is the soul of transformation. Systems don't change people.
Nope. No, I mean,
people change systems.
See, it sounds like I just throw it out there all the time, and it's terrible that it sounds this way. But I'm like, this is cyclical. It's cyclical. It's cyclical because it is, because it's the same war. It's just a different time. It's a different season.
Well, the root is always the same.
Same war. Same. Same. Same.
At the root of it, it's always the same because it's human nature, right? So it's always ego, status, and stuff.
Right.
It's always reduced down to those two things, status and stuff.
So what our purpose in our own lives is to get it straight in our journey and what that looks like. But we need to protect, our physical, our mental, and our spiritual. I mean, protect. So at this point, we do have a say, though. I'm just going to say, you better get out there and vote. Vote, vote, vote. I'm one of those.
Yeah, sure.
Vote.
Absolutely.
You at least have that freedom right now. Right now. You're not always going to have that freedom. Guess what? You're not always going to have that freedom. Just saying. You better do it. Do it now before the change comes. Because if this is cyclical, where are we headed, Bob?
Well, again,
where you said your book, your whole book. What does your book say?
Yeah, but it's even more. Remember, I'm trying to get people to wake up to the reality of this. We have a whole generation and a generation behind that thinks very differently because we taught them to think differently.
Right.
So a lot of what's going on now eventually is going to be the norm. So I'm telling you, as a sociologist, unless there's some sort of massive transformational moment,
right,
it's very predictable where we're going.
Yeah, right. There's nothing
not
new.
Rocket science. You just got to look at the nature and the worldview and how people think. And I'm just telling you, there's a whole generation or two out there that is looking to be taken care of.
Yeah.
So, I'm just saying, it's that set in stone that's where it's going to go, because you can have these transformational moments. But there's a whole nother group of people out there, which I wrote in my book, who want to be the people that control the people that all want to be taken care of. Like, there's a whole group of people that are going, oh, I'll take care of you. And I've got the technology.
Yes, I will
do it. And if you'll just give up your freedom,
that's right.
And you'll abdicate all your decisions.
We will give you everything. We will give you all of it.
Exactly. And there's a whole bunch of people out there going, yeah.
You won't have to think not one thing. Don't worry.
Yeah, you don't have to be responsible, right? Right? You don't have to be responsible. You don't have to be responsible for your decisions. You'd have to deal with the consequences because they're all made for you.
Just sit in your house and play video games. It's be fine.
Exactly, because we're going to all entertain ourselves to death, as I wrote about. Because it's all about being more efficient so we have more time to play.
Yeah.
And be entertained.
So what do you guys think about that? They're saying nothing hardly. Kenny just said there's nothing new under the sun, which is true. Yeah. What do you guys have to say? What say you? What say you, people? So,
of course, we're into some topics that are kind of difficult to have little bitty.
Yeah. We've lost viewership. Just saying, our viewers went down. Like, we were up and then now it's down. They're like, oh Lord, they're too heavy for Monday morning when it's raining and storming out there.
Exactly. So,
but guess what? The outside is a reflection of what's going on.
Yeah.
Right now, the darkness, the crazy winds, the storm that just came in. I mean, we've got to do something. What do we have to do? We have to fix some places.
Well, you got to start with fixing ourselves.
We need to share some wisdom with some people. So please share our show. I know it's a little controversial.
Well, I'm making people stop and think. You know what I mean? One of the things that I'm struggling with.
Is up. Man, this is a rough one today, Bob. I'm just saying.
No, it's we've become sort of academically lazy or intellectually lazy. It's like we're not seekers of truth, meaning that we're not diligent in digging to get to those gold nuggets. We sit back and we flip on the TV and we get on our phones and we watch all the pundits tell us how we're supposed to think, right? But we don't actually dig and get down to history and study and figure out how, you know what I mean? And I understand, because everybody's got a lot of pressure in their lives and they're dealing with a lot of stuff. But I'm just telling you, there's a lot at stake at the moment, and it's not a good time to sort of abdicate to other people's worldviews.
Well, just like what Kenny just said, I know he missed the T, but that's okay. We know what he's saying.
I thought he said we need to reopen, and I was like, "Oh, we're back to that again." No. Oh, and of course he's using the word.
And you love that. Well, right, and people take that word so negatively. I hate that they do.
Well, and again, because it's been co-opted by the religious world into this sort of terrible thing that you do because you're such a wicked person, instead of somebody that's actually sat down and thought something through and went, I changed my mind.
Yeah,
and what it actually means, I'm changing my mind. And I'm going to go in a different direction now.
And I need to do things differently.
Right. So it's like repenting isn't like this thing that you do at an altar call at church, where you're on your knees weeping and crying. It's something you do every day of your life when you change your mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Look up the word when it means repentance.
Exactly. So, well, we're there.
Dang. We went heavy, Bob. Oh my goodness gracious. It was not, it was kind of like I thought we were going to have a coffee chat happy.
I don't know what happened. You pushed some buttons and
oh my gosh.
You kept asking me about the roots of things. And so now here we are. So
the roots.
So basically what you need is extra strong coffee this morning.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
You need the dark, deep roasted stuff with high caffeine for this show.
Man. Okay. So Thursday night we were having Michelle on our show, and I'm very excited to have her. And I'm going to put some links out there this week to her YouTube channel and all of that, so you guys can check her out. And just really pleased to have her on the show this week. And anyway, if any of you have any topic ideas that you'd like to send us, please, send it through the Awakenings Within channel, or a personal message. That would be fine, or an email. I have that out there too. Oh, good morning, Dr. B. What did you miss? Oh man, you missed
Dr. B. He's really late to the party. So I'm going to abuse Dr. B. He's on African time. You know what that is?
No.
It's like church starts at 9 and everybody shows up at 11.
What?
Well, they don't have vehicles, so they got to walk to church. They got to take right. And so African time is nothing ever starts on time. So Dr. B is tuning in at the end of the show, which is very, very African of him.
Wow. Well, we're glad you're here for the last minute.
Yeah.
So everyone, I guess our message is seeking truth this week. Yeah. Seek your truth. Seek out giving some information to young people who obviously need some history lessons, or however you're going to do that. And, just seek your truth and be kind to each other. So anyway, thank you guys.
Be a light in the darkness.
Be a light in the darkness. So peace out.
All right.
All right. Bye. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Bob.
See you Thursday.
Join us Monday mornings at 8:45 a.m. and Thursdays 6:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. See you then.